once again. Thank you for joining me as we continue our discussion after the budget. Joining me once again for after the budget discussion is Dr. Vanus James, economist. Good afternoon, Dr. Vanus James.
Hi, Aisha. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well.
You sound happy today.
Thanks for joining us. Dr. James, so we're going to continue our discussion about the maiden budget by Minister Tanku just Monday gone. Now, one of the baseline considerations you and I discussed is that this is the first budget of what we would consider a new government. And one of the questions I had is, based on what we saw in the budget and what was presented, it pretty much looks like budgets of the past administration. Can we give them a bly in terms of they only recently got into office and have not had enough time to wrap their head around what they may need to do? But of course, the budget is due before the end of October, and that is what allowed them to present the type of budget that they presented on Monday.
Well, that's a political decision for the country. The country could decide to give a bly, you knew. But the country's problems remain there to be solved. And one must say the government has been in waiting for 10 years and observing the failures and successes of the Rowley government. So they had a lot of time to think through things if they were doing their homework. So it's the politics of the country that will determine a bly, but the crisis in the economy demands immediate attention and skillful attention at the same time.
The format of the budget and what was presented, does it say anything about whether or not this present administration heard from the people of Trinidad and Tobago? Does the budget reflect it any way in particular, yes or no?
I think so. I think a lot of the promises that were made by the government in the elections reflect their engagement with their citizenry, with their customers and so on. And I think what that also means is that they would try to, and you could see in the budget that they're trying to give some, let's say, attention, pay proper attention to what they heard from their customer base.
Okay. One of the things that you continue to see is that the budget that has been presented does not give any indication towards plans for development with growth. And I wanted you to go over that for citizens as well. What is development by itself? What is development with growth? And what did we need to see in the budget to at least have a hope that there will be some development and growth taking place in the next fiscal?
Well, it takes a long time to develop an economy, so it won't happen in the next fiscal year. Foundations could be laid in the next fiscal year, and in the normal course of driving development, you would have a medium-term expenditure framework and a long-term plan. And then what you would do is you would implement that year by year. So incrementally you head towards the end game that you're going after with your development agenda. So we have to put that on the table. I think what the country needs to understand is that development in Trinidad and Tobago has a specific meaning anchored on the facts of the country. In the case of both Tobago and Trinidad, the baseline evidence is a limited supply of capital.
And we should define what capital means. We're not talking about capital in terms of funding or financing.
Resources you use to produce.
Which includes knowledge.
Knowledge and skills and equipment.
Right. So it's not just about financing.
It's not just money.
So yes.
Well, money, of course,
money, yes,
activates all of it.
Yeah.
And the supply is expressed for our country, especially the limited supply is expressed especially in the large pool of persons in the labor force that's undereducated.
Yes, and that's something you continue to stress.
Yeah.
The undereducation of our nation's people.
Because when you have a limited amount of education, you could only use a limited kind of capital and only specific, not the high-level type of capital that yields high productivity.
Okay, and high-paying jobs as well.
And related to that high-paying jobs. So that's where your CPEP and URP type low-level clerical work type problem comes from. You have a large number of workers in those elementary type operations and so on occupations because of the undereducation. It's 68.3% in Tobago. It's 60% on the, thereabouts in Trinidad. Now, that is a problem that you have to deal with, and the government tries to address that by scrapping CPEP and URP and stuff like that. But you see, it takes the other face of the solution. The other face of the solution to scrapping the CPEP and the URP and so on is to create productive jobs. And those productive jobs are going to have to be created in a specific way as we understand it in our profession. That is to say, what you have to do is you have to grow the economy in a certain way. In particular, you have to grow, if you have this capital shortage problem, you have to grow capital output faster than consumer output. And secondly, you have to restructure trade. You have to produce and sell abroad the things you can produce most cheaply. And you have to import from abroad, shift your import structure to import from abroad whatever you cannot produce at home and whatever is expensive for you to produce at home. And the data we have that I just told you there about the labor force tells you agriculture and consumer goods generally are going to be the most expensive things we could produce. And the things that are cheapest for us will be, because of the high productivity of the teachers and the nurses and the doctors and so on, those are the things that are going to be cheapest to produce. Because if you took, it's a simple idea that the public can understand actually. If you took a farmer from agriculture with a low productivity and turned that farmer into a teacher, what you're going to lose from taking the farmer out of agriculture is very little.
Yeah, but what you're going to gain
from the teachers and the nurses and the doctors, right? So the real cost of moving into high-end professions and the professional services generally in the country is very low, what you're giving up.
Yes.
But if you moved in the opposite direction, if you took a teacher or a medical doctor and put that person into agriculture, what you're going to get from the agricultural output, even if it's a medical doctor you send down there, will be very low output. But what you're going to give up is high levels of output. So it's expensive to move a medical doctor into agriculture. And it's cheap, you see, to move a farmer into medicine. Whatever the mechanics that you have to go through to get that done. That's the basic idea that economics explains, and that's what Arthur Lewis won his Nobel Prize to explain to the world.
Okay.
Once you understand that, it tells you that in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, there are things we cannot produce. We can't make the trucks and the cars and so on. But we're pretty good, if we think through what we're doing, at producing high-level education, high-level healthcare, high-level financial services, creative industry output, the carnival industries and stuff like that. We're good in those areas, and the housing stock to go along with those. And if we understand that, then what it tells you is that if you want to develop the Trinidad and Tobago economy, and any other Caribbean economy I'm aware of, you have to head in that direction. You have to produce those kinds of things for export, and you have to import relatively more of things like the food and the consumer goods and the cars and whatever else you cannot produce. Understood. That's the way you have to understand the redirection of the economy.
Okay. And I wanted to touch it because when we start talking specifically about Tobago, one of the things the minister indicated was that he was getting rid of CPEP and URP, and according to him, replacing them with providing full-time, better paid jobs. And to that end, he created an employment fund with, I think it's about $400 and something million. Is this a start towards that, or you see this as something else where this is just keeping those people afloat until such time they are able to place them in whatever jobs?
Well, I cannot say it's a start because I don't know from the document what the minister has in mind. The critical question, though, is even if you're going to disband CPIP and URP, the solution that you're looking for these underemployed workers is a large pool of them.
Yeah.
And
10,500, I think.
Yeah, there's much more than that, actually,
Yeah.
if you come properly.
Okay.
Right. So if you have a large pool, what you're going to find out is that the way to absorb them into better jobs is to do what I was just describing as development and diversification of the economy.
Yeah.
You have to move them out of the low-end, low productivity work, including CPIP and URP itself, and get them into high productivity work. Now that takes time. That is not something you could do next year and year after and so on. That's the development process you're talking about. That takes decades. But you've got to get it started and know what you're doing. And if you knew what you were doing, it would show up in the way you set up the development program and the way you set up the budget as steps in that direction. That's my biggest worry about this document, that I don't see the framing of the problem in a way that reflects that. There's another face to this, another part of the principle that the country has to understand and the government has to understand as quickly as possible, is that insofar as you will have a lot of people still remaining in agriculture and consumption-related production and so on, you have to raise productivity in those things. But when you're raising productivity in those things, you will find out that the market we have in the country is small.
Yeah, insufficient.
And because it's small, what it tells you is most, say, agricultural production has to be treated in the post-harvest sense.
So value-added product.
Agro-industrial, right. And then when you see that,
you have to find out who to sell it to.
What you're going to have to
export.
Have to. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about making agriculture an export driver.
Correct.
So what the minister is talking about with agriculture exporting, you have to be careful with that, because you cannot be talking about going back to the days when we're selling banana and sugar and cocoa and so on in that raw form. You have to be talking about the post-harvest processing. It's those industrialized products, because your domestic market is too small to keep fresh produce viable and active and usable for very long.
And the value-added products usually bring in more.
That's the point.
Rather than the primary products.
That's the point, and you have to sell it abroad. You have to put it in a nice form that the rest of the world, just like you buy cornflakes in the store, same problem they're solving in the rest of the world. So if you're doing it for lettuce or anything else, after you supply the local market with fresh produce and you get, if productivity goes up and you get this abundant surplus, the only way you could treat with the abundant surplus is to treat it in a post-harvest technological sense. Store it, put it in a form where you could sell it if you're in Tobago or Trinidad, sell it abroad in the region, sell it, right? That's what agro-industrial activity, that's what the famous manufacturing of consumer durables is all about.
All right, Dr. James, we'll take a break here now, and when we come back, we'll touch on how the government plans to fund this budget very shortly and the price of oil. Thank you for staying with us. Join us back in a few minutes.
Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything, almost anything, almost anytime, almost every day. We in every season for every reason. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything you want from a pharmacy. Just ask our pharmacist. Well, almost. We are here to serve all of you all of the time. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. 141 Chauvin Road, Buku. Call our pharmacy on 610-7634 or our supermart on 768-0723 and 766-0476. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy.
MI4 Security Services Company is the most advanced security service in Tobago. Ask about our cash and transit service. It's safe, risk-free, reliable, and timely. We provide safe banking delivery for all business types and sizes with highly trained staff, 24/7 monitoring, coordinated emergency response, and a well-maintained fleet of armored vehicles. Contact us at 660-7723 or visit our website at www.mi4securitytt.com to sign up today.
For 10 years, Pulse 89.5 FM has been the beat that moves Tobago. From the latest hits to the voices of the community, we bring the island's rhythm to life. Every day, every hour. Stay locked to Pulse 89.5 FM, the beat of Tobago. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram and stream us worldwide on the TuneIn app.
The Tobago Blue Food Festival 2025 is on October 19th, 2025. Enjoy live entertainment, cultural performances, and the best local vibes with good people. Don't miss the festival where food meets culture. The Tobago Blue Food Festival 2025, Sunday, October 19th at Bloody Bay Recreational Grounds. Check out their website at www.tobagofestivalscommission.com or follow on social media at Tobago Festivals for more.
Cathedral Credit Union is celebrating big. Get up to $81,000 at just 0.8% interest with our anniversary loan. And because Christmas is in the air, we're spreading cheer with up to $60,000 at only 1%. Visit cathedralcutt.com or call 235-6947 today. Cathedral Credit Union. Member-owned, member-focused.
Thank you for staying with us. Now, Dr. James, we just spoke about the problem of under-education in our population. And you've told me that that problem is also linked to another problem that we have, which is our high level of imports in Trinidad and Tobago. And all that generally comes down to our foreign exchange. And we do have a foreign exchange problem in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we know that foreign exchange problem is linked to oil and gas prices. And I know between you and I, we've been checking oil and gas prices since the budget has been read, because the budget has been pegged to a particular price of oil and gas in order to fund it. The question is, now, we talked about this before. What is the price of oil today? You had indicated it is in the 50s. However, the budget is pegged to a an oil price of somewhere between $74 and $76 a barrel. $73 a barrel.
And $4.25 for gas.
$4.25 for gas. Historically, even within the last fiscal, gas prices have not reached the 70-something.
Oil
Prices have not reached.
Neither of the targets.
Neither of the targets. So immediately we see the problem will continue in the new fiscal year. Let's talk about the government's plans for funding the upcoming budget or upcoming fiscal year.
Well, let's be careful with the interpretation of the problem so that we can deal with the financing properly. The underemployment and the undereducation of the labor force is a twin of the foreign exchange shortage problem. Mm-hmm. And it's a twin because the reason for both is the structure of the economy that is inappropriate for the country. We don't have enough production of education for export and healthcare for export and financial services for export and capital for export generally. We don't have enough of that. And since we're not producing enough of that, we're running into the foreign exchange shortage problem all the time, right? Because the economy depends heavily on imports, right? If your oil and gas prices dip, it shows up first in a shortage of foreign exchange. You begin to lose your reserves, and right now the country is in a place where our reserves are we're close to the edge, 5.4 months of import cover. This is an import-intensive country. 5.4 months of import cover is risky business.
Risky, yes.
So,
what is it supposed to be?
well, the normal things for well-run countries, especially well-run Caribbean countries, is you've got to get that up near 8, 9, 10
Months, okay.
When you're lucky with oil and gas prices, that's where it heads. But the normal thing, of course, is you want to have enough capacity to run your economy routinely. And if you're as highly import dependent as we are, then you need high import cover, 10, 12, 14 months of cover. You don't want to be anywhere near the edge at all. So the critical thing here is that when the government pegs the oil, the budget on a $73 oil price expectation, and the minister has indicated that that is a basket of prices. That's the average of a basket of prices. Okay. And $4.25 for gas. That's also an average. When you set it that way, and you set it high in that way, where it is now, given that where it is now is well below that target, the risk you're running, especially when you consider the history of our country, the risk you're running is that prices will not rise in the time frame of a year over which you're budgeting to get you the $11.5 billion of foreign exchange or whatever it is that is coming in from the oil and gas sector, right? Whatever the figure is that they estimate. Well, it's 11 point something billion TT dollars contributed to the budget, but there will be a foreign exchange take. And whatever that target is, that has to be important. Whatever that target is, that is what you're fundamentally putting at risk. You're also putting at risk your 11.5 billion of revenues from the energy sector. If you don't realize it, what you will run up with is what Rowley and his team ran up with over 10 years. Every year, you don't realize the target, then the projected budget is short on the revenue side. 2 billion from
the present government estimated last fiscal year that it would be 8 billion.
No, I'm not talking about the deficit. Just from the energy sector.
Oh, just from the, okay.
Yeah, you anticipate 11.5 billion.
Yes.
You might end up with 9.
Understood. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But if that happens in the energy sector, since the rest of the economy depends heavily on energy take, you're also going to miss your target from the non-oil part of the budget.
Okay.
Right? Because economy will go down, it will be depressed. So you will effectively find that the deficit that the government has estimated, if you don't hit those targets, will be substantially larger. And in the mid-year review, they'll have to make provisions to keep borrowing more and treat with those. So an optimistic bet on oil and gas in the context of the history of the country is a huge bet, it seems to me, just speaking as an economist observing the data. From the record I have seen, every 5 to 10 years or so, oil prices dip and bring down the government. Every government since Eric Williams has gone through that experience. Not one has escaped.
And when you say bring down the government, hardship in the country,
hardship in the country,
people, and they vote them out.
Not Tobagoans, Trinidadians get upset.
They get upset and they vote them out and give somebody else a chance.
Every 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
No government in the country has succeeded. Robinson almost lost his life with the same phenomenon. And the state of the economy today is not unlike the state of the economy when Robbie took power. So if I were the government, I would be very careful to understand the implications of this big bet, right? So that's the solution to both problems, both the foreign exchange shortage problem and the underemployment problem, the education problem is the same, diversification of the economy. So the country has been playing the God is a Trini hand for 70 years,
Oil and gas.
but it has not really worked for us. And some generation, some government has to pause and say, okay, time to change. So if I were this government, I would ask the fundamental question and coming in, why did Rowley fail? Rowley didn't fail just because he wicked and he incompetent, even if you agree he was that. He failed because the economy broke the back of whatever his intentions were, right? Failure to diversify the economy is a sure bet that within your 10-year span, oil prices are going to move against you. The government has to be thoughtful about that risk. Whatever else its intentions are, it cannot the country and the government cannot close their eyes to that real risk. And what the government is betting on here could be framed a little differently. It is betting on the high energy prices. It is betting that even if the system remains the way it is, things will work out, right? Things won't get brown, more and more brown every year. That's a big bet in this kind of country.
No,
And I would be careful with that if I were you.
During the Dr. Rowley administration, there were deficits. What happens to those deficits? Are they there? Are they in the form of loans that the government has an obligation to? I mean, the money doesn't just disappear.
No.
Where is it?
Well, deficits have to be funded if you're going to fund the expenditures that you plan. Mm-hmm. So when you borrow, it accumulates as debt. Mm-hmm. It's a compilation, borrowing from last year, next year you borrow, the next year you borrow. It all adds up to the national debt growing.
Do we know what our national debt is?
We do. I didn't work with the figure for this purpose, but we do know. And it has been growing in the last 10 years. We have not been able to pay down the debt, and there's a big reason for that. The rate at which the economy is growing is too low, and the rate at which it's restructuring is too inadequate relative to the interest costs that we are paying for debt. Okay. So if your growth rate is below your cost of debt, your debt becomes increasingly higher. Yes. If your growth rate is higher than your cost of debt, then you're paying down. Okay. And that's why you want your growth rate all the way up to 5% and 6%. If you're borrowing at 5%, you want your growth rate all the way up to 6% in real terms. Yeah. If your real interest rate is 2%, you want your real growth rate to be 3% above the debt cost. We have not been achieving that under the governments for a long, long time. Okay. This has nothing to do with this government. Yeah. It's just the data that you have to be aware of when you are planning and budgeting and so on. So I think that's important. And I think it's also important for the public to know that the government has signaled that in grappling with all of these challenges, we should look to the party manifesto. Yes. For our medium-term plan. Mm-hmm. Well, I've studied the manifesto, not just now, before the election. Mm-hmm. And I can say that the structural features that I'm talking about don't show up in the manifesto. So that's a warning sign to the government. You can't govern for your half. One of the reasons Rowley failed is he tried to govern for his half. Okay. You see, when Rowley is in the parliament, he and co-members function as though Kamala and her team shouldn't even bother to come to the parliament. Now, if you replicate that behavior here and signal to the country that you're really governing for your half, right? Even taking into account the swing vote that would have put Kamala in power, the mistake you are going to make is that you cannot develop an economy purely on the basis of your supporters. Correct. The whole economy has to be moving in tandem in all parts. Opposition, government, friend, foe, all are we have to be in the game. Yeah. So you have to be careful not to make the mistake Remember in 2015, we already did the same thing with the PNM manifesto, and then quickly had to hasten to do Vision 2030.
Do a medium-term plan, yes.
And Vision 2030. So it's the same thing. You're going to have to pivot quickly to get a proper medium-term policy framework in place that brings the country into the conversation. So that would be a question, I think, what we should signal to the government, that we need a broader, more adequate, more inclusive framework of policy to deal with these kinds of problems we're talking about. And that includes dealing with the problem of the bet on the oil prices.
Oil prices, okay. All right. When we return from this next break, we're going to zoom in on Tobago and how Tobago fits into the national budget. Stay with us. We'll come back in a little bit.
Cathedral Credit Union is celebrating big. Get up to $81,000 at just 0.8% interest with our anniversary loan. And because Christmas is in the air, we're spreading cheer with up to $60,000 at only 1%. Visit cathedralcutt.com or call 235-6947 today. Cathedral Credit Union. Member owned, member focused.
Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything, almost anything, almost anytime, almost every day. We in every season for every reason. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything you want from a pharmacy. Just ask our pharmacist. Well, almost. We are here to serve all of you all of the time. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. 141 Chauvin Road, Buku. Call our pharmacy on 610-7634 or our supermart on 768-0723 and 766-0476. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy.
Escape to elegance at Le Chateau Suites Tobago. Gated privacy, breathtaking villas, unforgettable memories, where Caribbean dreams become reality.
Rise and shine in the morning is just part of my day.
From 6:30 to 8:30 every day. Foreign man says so.
It informs me of what happens in Tobago. I find it to be so informative. Every aspect of Tobago affairs is being discussed there. So I will continue to look at Rise and Shine. That's my thing.
Monday to Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m.
I love Rise and Shine.
Have you visited Tobago Channel 5's Facebook or Instagram pages lately? Well, check them out now for all the interviews and up-to-date news. Remember to like, share and follow for Tobago news and current affairs information at your fingertips.
And welcome back. Now, Dr. James, we have established that the budget has been read. By Friday, the debate would start. We have also established that it is probably, well, it is not probably, the government is betting on the fact that at some point in time, oil and gas prices will go up. If that does not happen, what is the solution to the problem?
Well, let me just remind you that currently the market for oil and gas is showing glut, meaning favors depressed prices, including whether you're talking about an average of baskets or whatever. And the only way you get out of a glut like that is if something happens in the world, the Middle East, conflagration, Russia,
they blow up some oil,
right, and you take those supplies off the market.
Yeah, correct.
I don't think we can simply expect Russia's supply to get off the market.
Because everybody looking at what they could get to.
The cheap oil they sell to China and India and so on. And then you don't expect, even given what Trump has been trying to do, that the Middle East would blow up and take Middle Eastern gas out.
With it, yeah, out of the equation.
Right. You may succeed in taking some of the Venezuelan gas out, but Venezuela has pivoted to China and so on. So that's a doorway they have. So generally, it doesn't seem to me that you should focus your attention on the expectation that the prices would go up. And the long history of our country warns you against that. So the way forward is to confront this fundamental solution. Both the foreign exchange shortage problem and the undereducation problem of the country is solved by diversifying the economy. And that means something specific for Trinidad and Tobago. It means producing more education for export, producing more healthcare for export, upgrading and producing far more creative industry output, including film and video games and all the normal spin-offs from the carnival industries for export. Books, this, that, the other, documentaries, all the things you do in the media, more and more of that. The more the merrier.
What about finance?
Financial services, you have to think about wherever you could fit in. You don't have to fit in all, but you could fit in many, some, and wherever you go, you have to do it innovatively, because trade nowadays is primarily 80% of world trade is what we call intra-industry trade. I sell you music, you sell me music. Yeah. I sell you healthcare services, you sell me healthcare services. May the best healthcare service win. Yeah. So when you're dealing in that, every Monday morning you have to keep innovating. You have to find a way to educate your students so that students from abroad would want to come to Trinidad and Tobago to go to school, and so on, because they prefer the way you teach to, or maybe you ensure that your school system is freer with respect to free thinking and freedom of expression and so on. And if the Americans are blocking freedom of expression in Harvard, you say to Harvard, come team up with us in Trinidad and Tobago. Your students will be free to say whatever they want, okay? And when they're done, they could go party. So the point is you're looking out for opportunities to do those kinds of competitive things. And the key to that kind of competition is continuous adjustment and innovation. And let me tell the country, the carnival industries have established the paradigm for that. Every year, they bring out new music. No, sir?
New mass.
New mass. Yeah. Every year, just like a cell phone, every year you get a new version. Yeah. Carnival doing that long time. Yeah. So Minshall warned us that that's the mode you have to be in for everything we're doing. Yeah. And if you understand that, you will see that even though it will take time to get that all the ducks lined up there, that's the direction you have to go in. Mm-hmm. And that's the most worrisome thing about this way of thinking. To do that, you can't just trust the market to do it for you.
It has to be a directed
policy,
policy
exactly,
to get it done.
And the way you make policy to get that done has to be inclusive. That's my point about you can't get development with your half. Yeah. It has to be fully inclusive. So anybody, friend or foe, could participate in the process, could share the information they have about what they're doing. You could respond to that, you could help. It don't matter whether you are UNC or PNM or Tobagonian or Trinidadian.
Because everybody would benefit in the end.
You get the help you need in order to drive your share of the diversification effort.
Now, when you listed potential areas to diversify, you said we can't do them all, we have to pick what suits us. I noticed you didn't mention tourism, and especially tourism in the form that we do tourism. How come?
That's deliberate. I deliberately say that because tourism, as we talk about it, meaning beach tourism and that sort of stuff, is really a platform on which you can export the professional services. So and it's a platform we should exploit. But you could see the logic of my point, and we'll talk about that when we get to Tobago. What you're trying to do here is you're saying, come to Trinidad and Tobago to go to school. You'll get access to the beach for 5 months of the year. Mm-hmm. If you come for 2 semesters, you get it for 7, 8, 9 months of the year. So when you come, you're not tired of going to the beach, man.
Okay.
You have enough beach accessible to you.
And that is way more efficient than just the tourists that come to spend a weekend.
Absolutely. But what it does for you is this. It multiplies the amount of time and money you're spending in the country by 1,000-fold.
Okay.
So you come for the weekend, you spend $2,000 US. But if you come as a student for 6 months and 8 months, you spend 40,000 US dollars. That boosts the national economy. So the way you grow demand in the economy is by doing long-stay tourism. That's what you see happening in St. Kitts Nevis. That's what's happening in the Bahamas with financial services. When you go to buy a financial service product in the Bahamas, you can't do it over a weekend. What you have to do is you have to spend 3-4 months working out your portfolio. And what are you buying? Accounting services, legal services, portfolio design services. Those are the kinds of things we have to be thinking about. And you have to be bold enough. It got to take time. But you have to be clear in your science that this is where the country has to go. And yes, make baby steps,
Okay.
but some careful steps. Let me give you one last thought there that the country needs to think about, and the new government has to put it into its pot. Just the same kind of effort we put into getting foreign investment into oil and gas, it is the same effort you have to put into getting foreign investment into your education for export development, in your healthcare for development. No difference in the economic rules.
Okay.
So while we focus our attention purely on getting ExxonMobil, we're not talking to Cambridge and Harvard and Oxford and Manchester, Columbia and so on, to come and respond to the damage Trump is doing in America with investment in Trinidad and Tobago to exploit all the beautiful freedoms. Plus we have with Carnival that you could enjoy. You can't have enough Carnival in New York, but in Tobago you're getting Carnival every weekend nowadays, right?
Yes, definitely. So let's try and bring it home to Tobago. It continues to be said that Tobago has gotten the largest share of the national budget that it has ever had. If you want to look at it fairly, every year since the DRC, Tobago has gotten increasing amounts of money yearly from central government. The question is, what significance can Tobago attach to getting this 5%?
Well, if you look with an old eye of the kind that I look with, having seen all of it for years and years, before we had THA and so on, long before that, I was old enough to observe what was happening. I can tell you that before the advent of the THA, Tobago used to get 1% and 1.5, 1.2% of the budget. I remember when I came here to advise Ho Choi in 1997, the count was about 1.8% of the budget.
Of the national budget, okay.
That's why we went to court. The DRC passed the judgment, right? And, well, let me give you a little bit more history there. Before you got to the DRC, before you got the THA, it was a 1% and a 1.2%. After the THA came into being, right, the THA by nature is a government institution, and you began to run a government economy in Tobago, much more than before.
Yes.
And the consequence is that the share of government budget spent in Tobago increased. That went up to about 2.3%.
Okay.
When we saw that and put the development plan together and realized we don't have enough money to fund that kind of program, we went to the court and we got the DRC judgment. And the consequence of that is it doubled to 4.03% minimum.
Yeah, which
so
is
that was
what we got.
Doubling.
Yeah.
Since then, governments have been falling over themselves to prove they're satisfying the DRC, and they've been inching up.
Yes.
Kamala has gotten it now to 5%.
Yes.
But what is the record showing you? The record is showing you that you get no development in Tobago, whatever the percentage.
Understood.
Money can't buy development. That's the point, by itself. So what is missing? The key thing for Tobagonians to recognize, and for the government in Trinidad to recognize as well, is that the solution to the problem of no development in Tobago is identical to the solution to the problem of diversifying the economy. You cannot develop tourism without diversifying the economy. You cannot develop the tourism industry in Tobago unless you are diversifying the national economy. And unless Tobago becomes part of the process of exporting education and exporting healthcare and exporting financial services and high-end housing stock to go along with those kinds of things. So giving more money without a clear, integrated development program, diversification program, just means you're going to spend more money and you're not going to get no development. And old-time people would call that wasting money.
Okay.
They're not going to call it so now, maybe, because the politics suggests you want to go and win votes and so on.
Give it to the people.
But if you look with that old man's eye, like long eye, you look long at how the world works, you would see that even if you give 20% of the national budget,
without a development plan,
without that's great, because what it says to you is Tobago cannot develop tourism on its own, and maybe it cannot even do diversification on its own.
Okay.
Because the data we now have is that diversification is blocked in the country by the way the economy works.
Okay.
There are barriers in the Trinidad and Tobago economy that block diversification. It's not that the country doesn't want diversification. We've been talking about it since a little while. But you can't get it if the economy runs the way it does. And the data we now have is data that shows you that the greater the reliance we place on oil and gas, so every time you get a boom, what it does is it encourages the kinds of policies that block diversification. Let me just give you a quick hint into what those policies are. You grew up with them.
Yeah.
The whole education system is cooked up to educate Trinidad and Tobagonians, no? None of it is cooked up to educate foreigners.
Correct.
So it's locally focused.
Yeah.
That's a barrier. The whole healthcare system, local population you're caring for. None of it is cooked up to export healthcare. That's a barrier. The policies that drive the focus of the professional services on supplying local demand are the exact policies that block diversification of the economy. And we never knew that until this year because we never had the data to study it. Now we have 54 years of data, and it would be a great thing, a great service to the country to share that data with the government, because any government we have, you want it to succeed. And you want the government to understand the evidence in a way that allows it to make the right judgments. Okay. If it doesn't know what we are talking about here, it will not know what buttons to push. We also have a piece of evidence which explains why I'm saying we need the government to see the data. The data shows you that not any and every configuration of policy will cause diversification and development.
Okay.
You can do things, but much of them, if they are uninformed by this, will be hit and miss. Even if you knew, you still have to do the work to configure the policy to get the result you want. Okay. And if you don't figure that out, fiddle with that in your modeling, in your mathematical simulations and so on, your Minister of Planning and Development will not know what to put a finger on and guide the cabinet on where the country has to go. The Minister of Finance will finance the wrong things from all the various divisions, and ultimately you will spend 5 years and produce a road result.
All right.
Whatever your good intentions and your political wisdom.
All right, we'll take another break and come back.
Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything, almost anything, almost anytime, almost every day. We in every season for every reason. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. Almost everything you want from a pharmacy. Just ask for pharmacist. Well, almost. We are here to serve all of you all of the time. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy. 141 Chauvin Road, Buku. Call our pharmacy on 610-7634 or our supermart on 768-0723 and 766-0476. Vodel Supermart and Pharmacy.
MI4 Securities.
Right. Thank you. We're in the last segment of After the Budget. Now, Dr. James, in our pre-discussion, one of the things you pointed out to me is that the finance minister took the time to list the record of Dr. Rowley's administration in the budget, negatively at that. But you also noted that there was no record of our Chief Secretary's Farley's 4 years represented in the budget. How is that a problem?
Well, it wasn't that the finance minister provided a negative record of Dr. Rowley's report. I think he gave a pretty accurate picture.
Okay.
At the level of the GDP. If I were him, I would give it at the level of GDP per capita, because GDP per capita decline under Dr. Rowley was about 23%. He recorded a 17% decline on GDP. But remember, you have to subtract from that the rate of growth of the population.
Yes.
Okay. So when you calculate that, that gives you a picture that points you to the issues we are raising. Why did Dr. Rowley fail? If you understand that, that guides you in making national policy. With respect to the record of the THA in the last 4 years, same issues. You need to see the record because you need to understand why the Tobago economy declined and did not grow when the Trinidad economy was declining. That's the key question. Tobagonians and the government needs to understand. And the Tobago government, the THA, must understand, why are you having trouble causing growth and development in Tobago when there is problem in Trinidad? Why shouldn't the Tobago economy be booming and creating value for the country, offsetting the trouble they're having in Trinidad with oil and gas? There's a proper answer to that question, and if you don't know the record, if you don't understand what's happening in the Tobago economy, then you can't get to the answer. And that's the reason I am concerned that the minister would take the time to report properly on Dr. Rowley, but no time to report properly on the THA, because national policy trumps THA policy, even in the law. So if that is true, the minister in Trinidad can't just say, I take what the THA say, which is what was done in the document.
Yes, correct.
He has to look at the record properly, the same way you look at the whole national record. The Tobago record sits in the national record. And then you will make policy for the country in the right way. Now, that can't be done in Port of Spain alone. That requires the input of the THA. That is what would warn the government that you have to set up national policy-making mechanisms that are inclusive and so on, because you know you can't rob Tobago of its autonomy.
Yes.
So to do all of that, to have autonomy, to take responsibility for what's going on in the level of the country and so on, you need a mechanism of government that allows all the voices to be properly heard.
And to show the data segregated, including
to reflect all the facts.
Okay.
So the reason I thought that was an important thing is because it would lead you to worry as to whether we'll ever get around to an approach to national government that allows Tobago economy to function, autonomy to operate, and allows the country to develop. And I therefore want to caution the nation that the national economy cannot diversify effectively without Tobago development. They go hand in hand. National diversification and Tobago development go the same road. Tobago development can't take place without national diversification. Okay. You need national policy to deal with that problem. The national policy cannot exclude THA policy, but they must fit together and calibrate properly together. And so the law, the THA Act is a wise act in that sense. It says the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary must sit down monthly
and discuss.
And let we talk.
Yes.
Okay, but the content of that conversation
is what
requires
matters.
an inclusive framework of government. Dialogue between the two of them could help, but that's not enough.
Okay. Our final topic that I wanted to touch on is CPEP and URP.
Yes.
Government has chosen to do away with both programs in Trinidad, but our Chief Secretary has clearly said because the model in Tobago was different from the one in Trinidad, he plans on keeping it. The question is, does the same thing stand for CPEP and URP in Tobago in terms of these are under-educated people? Should a focus be placed on this group of people to get them to the level that the government is attempting, well, at least plans on trying to get for the group in Trinidad?
Well, well, you know me, I could only answer you as a scientist.
Yes.
I've always thought that the primary responsibility of my generation, including my partner Jerry and so on, is to work out where the country has to go. And I think we know better now. And the answer to your question in that sense is a priority problem, because this is the people part of your society, is to solve the problem of CPEP and URP.
Yes.
That's what development ultimately must deal with. You can't just say, we have it, we're keeping it. You have to put together, like in Trinidad, the government cannot say down there, we're scrapping it. That's not enough. You have to set the country on a diversification pathway, the whole country, so that the Tobago solutions could deal with the CPEP and URP problem, just like the national solutions. It's all about creating new jobs, like the minister said. But it's not just new jobs.
Yes.
It's new jobs that are consistent with the restructuring of production and trade.
Yes.
That is the only way to get on the right road. That's the only way in Trinidad, that's the only way in Tobago.
But the Chief Secretary indicated that the present URP and CPEP are very highly skilled. Cupboards, coffins, pots, they are able to do that level of work. And he believes that is something that could be developed on, unlike the set that it was in Trinidad.
Yeah, but that's not the central issue.
That's not the central issue.
No, it can't be, because fundamentally the central issue is that the economy of Tobago and the economy of Trinidad must be exporting its most productive things.
Yes.
You can't be saying you're making
cupboard
for local consumption. No,
understood.
They're not going to get you.
Okay. So then he has to look at it a bit further. What they are producing, we have to find a market for it outside of Tobago.
The country has to face the fact that we have a twin problem.
Yes.
The under-education problem and the foreign exchange problem. Both problems, and both are solved the same way.
Yes.
One solution. You have to shift in the direction of the exporters you have to be talking about are your teachers.
Yes.
The exporters that you have to be talking about are your medical doctors. You see when Kamala says she's doing the Cuba hospital? That's the right direction, but not just for local consumption. You have to be talking about exporting high-quality care to the rest of the region and the world from Cuba.
Understood.
And it's the same thing for Scarborough Hospital. And them is where you have to focus on.
Okay.
Even if you have to raise the productivity of workers that are producing consumer goods like cupboards and so on, even if you have to do that, all that does is it boosts the real wage of the country.
Yes.
But that doesn't solve the development problem, it doesn't help you to diversify, and it don't help you with your foreign exchange problem.
Dr. James, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Dr. James. It was a pleasure having you. Conversation was good as usual.
It was a pleasure talking to you, I have to say.
Thank you so much for joining us after the budget. Again, the debate starts on Friday at 10:30 a.m. at the Parliament. Do tune in, look out for some of the topics that we discussed and whether or not more information will be provided to the public so that you can make a decision as to your own life. Thank you so much and have a good evening.